The Apache woman, over 2 meters tall. No man could handle her until a rancher arrived. In a quiet village at the edge of the desert, surrounded by rocky hills and wide open plains, there lived an Apache woman named Nava. From the very beginning, she was different from everyone else. While most children in the village were small and fragile, Nava grew taller than anyone had ever seen. By the time she was a teenager, she already stood taller than 2 meters. Her height was only one part of what made her extraordinary. She had a strong, sturdy frame, and her arms and legs were powerful, shaped by years of climbing, running, and helping her family. People could see that she was not just tall, she was unstoppable. From the day she could walk, Nava moved with confidence. She ran through the desert as if she owned it, her long strides covering ground faster than most men could keep up with. She climbed rocky hills with ease and swam in rivers with strength that amazed anyone who watched. Even the elders of her village, who had seen many generations, shook their heads in disbelief. Some called her a giant, others called her a force of nature. Children admired her and tried to imitate her, but most could not even come close. Her strength was not only physical. Nava had a sharp mind and a brave heart. She learned quickly how to read the land, the changing wind, the signs of animals, the patterns of the seasons. She could track deer and rabbits in the desert, find water in hidden streams, and recognize plants that were useful for food or medicine. Even the hunters of her village were surprised at how much she knew and how fast she learned. She was not just strong, she was smart, clever, and independent. But her extraordinary presence came with challenges. Most men in the village were intimidated by her. They had never met a woman so tall, so confident, and so capable. Many of them felt unsure how to approach her. Some tried to talk to her, but their words stumbled, their gestures awkward. Nava did not need anyone's help, and she did not feel the need to impress anyone. She treated everyone with respect, but she also expected respect in return. Men who tried to act boastful or dominant often found themselves embarrassed or outmatched by her skills. Slowly, the villagers began to accept that Nava was unlike any woman they had known, and perhaps unlike anyone they could handle. Despite the attention she drew, Nava was not boastful or cruel. She was kind to children, helping them climb trees or teaching them how to gather berries. She was gentle with the elderly, carrying heavy loads for them when they could not manage, but she was firm when needed. She spoke with authority and moved with purpose, and people knew that to challenge her would be pointless. Some admired her from a distance, while others avoided her entirely, unsure how to approach someone so strong and independent. Nava spent her days working hard. She helped her family with farming, hunted for food, and maintained the household. She rose early in the morning when the desert was still cool and walked long distances to gather water and firewood. By noon, when the sun was high and the heat was almost unbearable, she was often still working, her strength allowing her to accomplish tasks that would exhaust others. People in the village often watched her with amazement, wondering how one person could do so much in a single day. Even in her free time, Nava was active. She would climb the tallest hills, race along the riverbanks, or explore the far reaches of the desert. She loved the freedom of the open land, the way the wind moved through her hair, the sound of birds calling overhead. She often felt more at home in the wilderness than in the village, though she cared deeply for her family and friends. The desert had become her teacher, shaping her into the strong, capable woman she had grown to be. But there were moments when Nava felt loneliness. Despite her popularity and the admiration of the villagers, few people truly understood her. They respected her strength but did not always appreciate her feelings, her dreams, or her need for connection. Children looked up to her, men were often intimidated by her, and the elders regarded her with quiet awe. Yet Nava wished for companionship, someone who could see her not just as a giant woman or a legend, but as a person with hopes, fears, and a heart. Stories about Nava spread beyond the village. Travelers passing through would whisper about the Apache woman who towered over everyone, the woman who could outrun men, hunt better than the best hunters, and survive in the desert with ease. Some came to see her, hoping to test her strength or challenge her in some way, but none succeeded. Nava treated these visitors politely but firmly, showing them that she was not to be trifled with. The stories grew, and soon people from nearby villages told tales of her as if she were more than human, a woman who could not be matched. Yet, despite all the stories and admiration, Nava remained humble. She did not see herself as better than anyone else. She knew that her strength was part of her, just as the desert, the wind, and the sun were part of life around her. She respected others and their skills, and she was willing to help anyone in need. But she also knew that not everyone could match her, and she accepted that with grace. This acceptance gave her peace, even as she longed for someone who could truly connect with her. In the evenings, Nava would sit under the vast desert sky, watching the sun set behind the hills. The colors of the sky, the quiet whispers of the wind, and the soft calls of distant animals were her companions. She reflected on her day, her accomplishments, and the dreams she still held. Though she was admired by many, she understood that admiration was not the same as understanding. She dreamed of a partnership, a bond with someone who respected her strength, shared her love of life, and could walk beside her, not behind or ahead, but equally. Nava's story at this point in her life was one of strength, independence, and quiet longing. She was respected, admired, and even feared by some, yet she remained deeply human, with emotions, hopes, and dreams like anyone else. She was a woman ahead of her time, living with courage in a world that did not always know how to handle someone like her. And though she did not yet know it, her life was about to change when a man finally arrived who could see her as she truly was, not just as a legend, but as a woman with a heart, a mind, and a soul that matched the grandeur of her presence. This was the life of Nava, the Apache woman over 2 meters tall, the woman no man could handle, the woman who lived fully and fiercely, yet quietly waited for someone who could match her spirit. Her story was only beginning, and the desert, her faithful companion, would continue to watch over her as she faced the adventures, challenges, and surprises that lay ahead. Even though Nava was admired by her village for her incredible height, strength, and intelligence, there was a quiet emptiness in her heart that no one seemed to notice. People admired her skills. They spoke of her as if she were a hero or a legend, but admiration was not the same as understanding. Few people really knew the woman behind the towering figure, the person who laughed easily, worried quietly, and hoped deeply for a life that went beyond survival and strength. She was independent, fearless, and skilled in every task she attempted, yet she carried a subtle weight inside her, one that came from being different in a way that the world did not always understand. Life in the village continued in its usual rhythm, with families tending to their crops, hunters traveling the desert for food, and children playing in the fields. Nava participated fully in this life, performing her duties with unmatched skill. She would rise before the sun, her movements swift and precise as she fetched water from distant streams, tended to her small farm, and prepared food for her family. She carried baskets filled with fruits and vegetables, lifted heavy stones to repair the fences, and guided the younger members of her family in learning the ways of the land. Every task seemed simple in her hands, yet each one required an energy and stamina that left others exhausted. Despite her contributions and achievements, Nava often felt a sense of isolation. The villagers admired her strength but did not always understand her. When she spoke to the men of the village, they often became quiet, unsure of what to say or how to act around her. Their hesitation was not out of disrespect, but out of awe mixed with intimidation. They had never encountered a woman so powerful, and it was difficult for them to reconcile their admiration with the natural social expectations of courtship or friendship. In their eyes, she was too tall, too strong, too extraordinary. And in a way, Nava understood them. She had never met someone who could meet her spirit without fear or hesitation. Nava's friends were few, but the relationships she did form were deeply meaningful. She spent time with the children, teaching them how to run efficiently across rocky terrain, how to spot tracks of animals, and how to find water hidden beneath the desert sand. She enjoyed watching their excitement and curiosity, feeling a sense of pride when they learned something new. These small moments of connection were precious to her, though they could not replace the companionship she truly longed for. She dreamed of someone who could speak to her heart as well as her mind, someone who could share not only her work but also her life. Evenings in the village were quiet. After the sun dipped below the horizon, Nava would often sit outside her small home, gazing at the stars above. The desert night was her constant companion, the wind whispering through the rocks, the soft calls of nocturnal animals, and the endless sky stretching above her. In these moments of stillness, Nava reflected on her life. She remembered the early days when she was a child, climbing rocks and running across fields with the same joy she felt now. She remembered the admiration of the villagers, the whispered stories of travelers, and the awe of those who had witnessed her strength. Yet, for all the attention, she still felt the absence of someone who truly understood her. Sometimes, men from neighboring villages came to see her, curious to witness the towering Apache woman for themselves. Some attempted to impress her with strength or bravado, challenging her to feats they thought she could not accomplish. Nava would always meet these challenges calmly, demonstrating skill without arrogance and leaving the men astonished. Most left humbled, realizing that they could not match her. Others tried to converse with her, yet the conversation often ended awkwardly. They were polite, yet unsure of how to connect with someone who so clearly existed beyond their usual expectations. Through these encounters, Nava learned that the world outside her village held the same mixture of admiration and misunderstanding she had already experienced at home. Her family was her anchor, yet even they struggled to fully relate to her. Her younger siblings looked up to her in awe, following her lead in daily tasks and trying to learn from her example. Her parents admired her achievements, proud of her skill and independence, yet at times they worried about her solitude. They knew that no one in the village seemed capable of matching her, and they quietly feared that she would remain alone. Nava loved her family dearly, and she cherished their presence, but she yearned for a companion beyond her family, a partner who could walk beside her through life's challenges and joys. Nava's solitude was not sadness exactly. It was a quiet longing, a recognition that something important was missing. She loved her independence, the freedom to move through the desert and climb the hills as she pleased. She loved the work that shaped her body and mind, the connection to the land that gave her strength. Yet she also recognized that life felt fuller when shared. She imagined conversations with someone who could understand her without being intimidated, someone who could laugh with her, work beside her, and respect her power without fear. These thoughts filled her nights as she gazed at the stars, wondering if such a person even existed. Despite her isolation, Nava never allowed loneliness to diminish her spirit. She continued to participate fully in village life, offering help wherever it was needed and teaching the younger generation the skills that had made her strong. She led hunts, guided travelers through the desert, and shared her knowledge of the land with anyone willing to learn. Her reputation grew steadily, not as a woman to be feared, but as a figure of respect, someone whose strength was matched by her intelligence, kindness, and generosity. People began to recognize that Nava's greatness was not just in her physical abilities, but in her character, her courage, and her dedication to the world around her. One day, while helping a group of children gather firewood near the edge of the desert, Nava noticed a group of travelers passing by. They were not the usual curious visitors who came to see her. These travelers were calm, respectful, and observant. One man among them caught her attention, not because he tried to impress her, but because he seemed to notice her as a person, not just a figure of legend. There was a quiet strength in his presence, a patient confidence that differed from the hesitant or boastful behavior she had encountered before. Nava found herself watching him with curiosity rather than wariness, intrigued by the possibility that someone might approach her without fear. In the days that followed, Nava continued her work, but she could not stop thinking about the man. Unlike others who had come to see her, he did not seem intimidated or overwhelmed. He did not compete with her, nor did he attempt to dominate her presence. Instead, he moved beside her respectfully, learning from her, observing her with genuine interest and acknowledging her expertise. For the first time, Nava felt a sense of hope, a small, growing belief that perhaps someone could match her in spirit, strength, and understanding. Yet Nava remained cautious. She had lived long enough to know that admiration alone could not sustain a meaningful connection. She needed someone who could truly engage with her as an equal, someone who respected her independence while offering companionship. The thought of opening her heart was both exciting and frightening. She had never needed anyone to survive, but she had always longed for someone to share life with, not to complete her, but to walk beside her on equal ground. As the sun set over the desert hills, casting long shadows across the land, Nava sat quietly and reflected on her life. She thought about the years of solitude, the moments of admiration mixed with misunderstanding, and the quiet longing she carried within her. She thought about the travelers she had seen, and the possibility that one among them might be different. For the first time in many years, a small spark of anticipation stirred within her, a feeling that her story was about to take a new turn, that life might bring her a companion who could truly understand her strength and spirit. Nava's life, though filled with independence, skill, and adventure, had been shaped by solitude. She had learned to thrive on her own, to conquer challenges that would have overwhelmed others, and to command respect through her abilities and character. But the longing for someone who could match her heart remained, a longing that would continue to grow, guiding her toward the moment when a new presence would enter her life, one that could see her as she truly was, strong, brilliant, and deeply human. Even as the stars began to fill the night sky, Nava felt the quiet pull of change. She had faced many challenges, overcome countless obstacles, and proven her strength time and again. Yet she also knew that strength alone could not bring the connection she desired. Somewhere in the world, perhaps beyond the hills and desert plains, there was someone who could meet her spirit with patience, respect, and understanding. And for the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to hope that such a person might soon arrive, ready to walk beside her through life's vast and unpredictable journey. The days passed quietly in Nava's village, with the desert sun rising and falling in its usual rhythm. Nava continued her daily routines, fetching water, tending her small fields, hunting, and guiding the younger members of her family. Yet in the back of her mind, a small curiosity had begun to grow. She could not forget the travelers she had seen approaching the village a few days ago. Among them was a man whose presence had been calm, respectful, and confident in a way that set him apart from anyone Nava had ever met. There was a spark in his demeanor, something that drew her attention without demanding it, and she found herself wondering about him, feeling a mix of caution and anticipation she had never experienced before. It was not long before he appeared again. The man, whose name was Elias, had arrived at the village with a small caravan of supplies. Unlike other visitors, Elias did not seek the attention of the villagers or try to display his strength. He walked quietly among the people, observing, helping, and engaging with respect. Nava noticed him immediately, standing taller than most, yet without arrogance. His eyes were steady, thoughtful, and alert, as if he was seeing the world clearly and without judgment. There was a calm assurance about him, a quiet confidence that contrasted sharply with the nervous or boastful behaviors of the men who had tried to impress her in the past. Elias had heard stories about Nava before he arrived. Travelers along his route had spoken of the Apache woman who towered over everyone, who could outrun men, climb hills effortlessly, and survive in the desert with remarkable skill. Most people told tales of her strength as if it were a warning or a challenge. But Elias did not come to test her. Instead, he came with curiosity and respect, seeking to understand a person whose reputation had already traveled far. From the moment he entered the village, he was drawn to her presence, not as a challenge to overcome, but as a mystery to discover. Their first meeting was quiet and understated. Nava was tending her small herd of goats near the river when Elias approached. He greeted her politely, acknowledging her work without pretense or exaggeration. She studied him carefully, noticing the way he carried himself, the patience in his movements, and the way he seemed to observe rather than dominate. There was no fear in his eyes, no hesitation or awkwardness. For the first time in her life, Nava felt the curious sensation of meeting someone who did not shrink away from her strength, nor did he try to overshadow it. Over the next few days, Elias stayed near the village, helping with small tasks and learning about the land. He worked alongside Nava when she asked for help, carrying heavy loads, mending fences, and guiding animals to pasture. Yet even in his labor, he never attempted to dominate or control. He moved with care and respect, acknowledging her skill while offering his own. This behavior was unlike anything Nava had experienced before. She was used to people either fearing her, attempting to impress her, or withdrawing entirely. Elias did none of these things. Instead, he matched her energy with quiet strength, his presence both steady and reassuring. Nava found herself observing him closely. She noticed the way he handled the animals with care, the way he listened when she spoke, and the way he adapted quickly to her instructions without question. He did not act as though he knew more or was superior. He simply worked beside her, willing to learn and to contribute. She began to feel a strange sense of comfort in his presence, a feeling she had not experienced in years. Here was someone who did not see her height or her power as a threat, but as something to respect and appreciate. As they spent more time together, conversation between them began to flow naturally. Elias asked questions about the desert, the plants, and the animals, showing genuine interest in her knowledge. Nava, in turn, found herself explaining and demonstrating skills she had long taken for granted: how to track a deer, identify edible plants, or find water hidden beneath the sand. She was impressed by his willingness to learn, his humility, and his ability to observe without judgment. With each passing day, she felt her walls begin to ease, and a sense of connection slowly began to form. One afternoon, they walked together along the riverbank, checking the water levels and observing the small fish that darted beneath the surface. Elias laughed quietly at a joke Nava made, and for the first time in years, she laughed freely in return. The sound felt light, unburdened, and natural, a moment of pure companionship that she had rarely experienced. She realized that she was not just enjoying his presence, she was beginning to trust him. She sensed that he could match her spirit, understand her independence, and still walk beside her without fear or hesitation. Despite the growing bond, Nava remained cautious. She had lived long enough to know that admiration alone was not enough. She had seen men try to impress her, only to falter when faced with her true strength. She had seen people fear her, respect her, and leave her isolated in the end. Yet Elias was different. He did not rush her, he did not demand her attention, and he never acted as though he could control or change her. This patience, combined with his quiet strength, gradually earned her respect and curiosity. She found herself looking forward to his presence, wondering what he would say or do next, and realizing that perhaps she had finally found someone who could walk beside her as an equal. The villagers, too, noticed the change. They saw Nava spending more time with Elias, laughing with him, working beside him, and engaging in conversation that seemed effortless. Their whispers, once filled with curiosity and speculation, shifted toward admiration. People began to recognize that Elias was unlike anyone else who had tried to approach Nava. He did not diminish her presence, he complemented it. Slowly, the village began to see that Nava's life, which had once been defined by solitude and independence, might now include companionship and partnership. As the days turned into weeks, Nava and Elias continued to work together. They repaired fences, tended to the fields, and guided the animals with synchronized efficiency. Nava noticed how effortlessly Elias adapted to her pace, how he respected her decisions, and how he offered his own skills without arrogance. She began to share more of herself with him, stories of her childhood, memories of her family, and the lessons she had learned from the desert. Elias listened attentively, asking thoughtful questions and sharing his own experiences in return. The connection between them deepened, built on trust, respect, and a shared understanding of life's challenges. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills and the desert was bathed in golden light, Nava and Elias sat together by the river. The water reflected the colors of the sky, and the wind carried the soft scent of desert flowers. They spoke quietly, not needing grand gestures or dramatic words. The conversation flowed naturally, filled with laughter, shared observations, and moments of silence that felt comfortable rather than awkward. In that quiet evening, Nava realized something profound. For the first time, she felt truly seen. Elias saw her not just as a towering, strong woman, but as a person with dreams, hopes, and a heart capable of connection. The arrival of Elias marked a turning point in Nava's life. Where once she had felt solitude and admiration from a distance, she now experienced companionship, trust, and the possibility of partnership. His presence did not diminish her independence, it respected it. His strength complemented hers, and his patience allowed her to open her heart in ways she had not imagined possible. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe that life could be shared, not because she needed someone to complete her, but because someone might finally walk beside her as an equal, matching her spirit, courage, and strength. The desert, which had been her constant companion for so many years, now witnessed a new chapter in her life. The hills, rivers, and open plains that had shaped her skills and independence now also bore witness to the budding connection between Nava and Elias. It was a quiet, natural unfolding, like the rhythm of the desert itself, slow, steady, and enduring. And though challenges and uncertainties remained, Nava felt a sense of hope and anticipation she had not experienced in years. In those early weeks of Elias' arrival, Nava discovered something she had not known she was missing: the joy of shared effort, the comfort of understanding, and the quiet thrill of connection. She realized that true partnership was not about domination, control, or imitation, but about respect, patience, and the ability to walk together through life's journey. And in Elias, she found a man capable of meeting her at that level, a man who could handle her strength, honor her independence, and share in the life she had built with such care and determination. By the time the weeks turned into months, Nava and Elias had formed a partnership unlike any other. The villagers no longer whispered of her as the untouchable giant. Instead, they marveled at the balance between her and Elias, a pair who moved together with skill, understanding, and mutual respect. Nava's life, once defined by solitude and independence, now included the possibility of love, companionship, and shared adventure. And through it all, she remained the same formidable woman, strong, capable, and deeply human, whose heart had finally found someone willing to walk beside her without fear. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, yet every day with Elias brought something new into Nava's life. Their partnership grew stronger, built not only on shared work but also on trust, patience, and the quiet understanding that they were equals. Nava, who had spent so long living independently, began to notice a shift inside her. She no longer felt the isolation that had always accompanied her strength. Instead, she felt a steady warmth, a reassurance that someone could truly walk beside her without fear or hesitation. The desert, which had always been her closest companion, now witnessed their growing bond. Nava showed Elias the hidden parts of the land that only she knew, the small springs tucked away behind rocky hills, the patches of wild plants that could be used for food or medicine, and the secret pathways that allowed her to move quickly across the plains. Elias absorbed her knowledge eagerly, asking questions and observing carefully. He never assumed he knew better, never rushed her, and never questioned her expertise. This respect amazed Nava, for she had long been used to people either underestimating her or fearing her strength. With Elias, she felt seen, heard, and valued. Working side by side, they accomplished tasks that once seemed impossible alone. Nava taught Elias how to track animals, how to recognize subtle signs in the desert, and how to use the land wisely without exhausting it. In turn, Elias showed her new ways to manage the ranching and her crops, introducing tools and techniques that complemented her own skills. Their work became a dance of cooperation, sometimes silent, sometimes filled with laughter and conversation, but always harmonious. The villagers, who had once regarded Nava as untouchable, watched with admiration as she and Elias moved together with efficiency and understanding. Nava noticed small, meaningful gestures in Elias that deepened her respect for him. He would wait for her to speak first when discussing important matters, listen carefully to her advice, and offer his opinions without force. He never tried to dominate her decisions, and he never treated her independence as a threat. Instead, he embraced it, understanding that her strength was not something to be subdued but celebrated. For Nava, this behavior was a revelation. She had spent so many years meeting resistance, doubt, and fear from others, and now she realized that true partnership could be gentle, respectful, and empowering. Their conversations often lasted long into the evenings. They would sit beneath the desert stars, sharing stories from their pasts, dreams for the future, and reflections on the world around them. Nava spoke of her childhood, the lessons she had learned from the desert, and the experiences that had shaped her independence. Elias shared his own journey, the challenges he had faced, and the reasons he had learned to respect both strength and humility. These exchanges allowed them to connect not just through work but through understanding, seeing each other's hearts and minds with clarity and compassion. Even in moments of quiet, their bond strengthened. Sometimes they would walk along the river in silence, listening to the gentle rush of water over rocks, feeling the wind on their faces, and appreciating the simple joy of each other's company. Nava realized that she no longer needed to perform or prove herself to anyone. With Elias, she could simply be herself, strong, independent, and fearless, without worrying about whether she was too much for someone to handle. This realization brought her a deep sense of peace and happiness that she had not known before. Their partnership extended beyond work and conversation. They celebrated small victories together, whether it was a successful hunt, a repaired fence, or a crop that thrived under their care. Elias often brought small gifts from his travels, items of practicality or simple beauty, and Nava appreciated them not for their value but for the thought behind them. In turn, Nava shared with him the hidden treasures of the desert, the perfect spot to watch the sunrise, the best wild berries in season, or a secluded area where animals gathered safely. Through these exchanges, they learned to trust one another fully, relying on each other's strengths while honoring their individual talents. Yet their growing closeness was not without challenges. The desert was harsh, and life demanded resilience and adaptability. There were times when storms swept across the plains, threatening crops and livestock, or when illness struck a family member and demanded long hours of care. In these moments, their bond was tested, and their ability to work together was essential. They faced each challenge with determination, each learning from the other and each growing stronger not just individually, but as a team. Through hardships, their respect deepened, and their connection became unshakable. Nava also began to notice the subtle ways in which Elias understood her without needing explanation. He anticipated her needs during work, offered help before she asked, and adjusted his pace to match hers without comment. He never made her feel small or overpowered. Instead, he lifted her spirit and honored her presence. For Nava, who had spent so long meeting resistance or fear from others, this level of understanding was transformative. It allowed her to fully embrace the joy of companionship while maintaining her independence and dignity. Their evenings became a time of reflection and connection. After the day's labor, they would sit near a fire, roasting simple meals and sharing quiet moments. Sometimes they would watch the stars, discussing constellations, the desert wines, or the history of their people. Other times, they would laugh over small mistakes made during the day or the peculiar behaviors of animals they had observed. These simple acts of togetherness created a deep sense of intimacy that words alone could not convey. Nava realized that true understanding often came in moments of shared presence, where silence and action spoke louder than language. The villagers began to take notice of the transformation in Nava. She was still the strong, formidable woman they had always known, yet she now radiated a sense of joy and calm that had been absent before Elias' arrival. She moved with confidence, yet with a subtle warmth that reflected the connection she had found. People whispered in admiration, noting that Nava had found someone who could match her spirit and complement her strengths. Her story, once one of solitary independence, was evolving into a tale of partnership, balance, and mutual respect. Through this evolving relationship, Nava learned an important truth. Strength was not only about physical power or skill, but also about the ability to trust, respect, and share life with someone equally capable. Elias had shown her that partnership did not mean compromising her independence, but enhancing it through understanding and cooperation. Together, they discovered that two strong individuals could coexist without fear, without competition, and without diminishing each other's abilities. As the seasons changed, so did their life together. The land they cared for flourished under their combined efforts. The crops grew abundantly, the livestock thrived, and the desert seemed to yield more than it had in years past. Nava felt a sense of fulfillment she had never experienced alone. It was not merely the satisfaction of work accomplished, but the joy of sharing it with someone who respected her talents, supported her endeavors, and appreciated her for who she truly was. Even on the quietest days, when work was done and the desert stretched endlessly around them, Nava and Elias found comfort in each other's presence. They would sit side by side, listening to the sounds of the night, the soft rustle of the wind, the distant calls of nocturnal animals, and the gentle trickle of the river. In these moments, Nava realized that companionship was not about constant conversation or dramatic gestures. It was about trust, understanding, and the silent acknowledgement of shared life. Through every challenge and triumph, their relationship deepened. They faced storms, illness, and the harshness of the desert together, learning to rely on each other without fear. Elias never sought to dominate or control, and Nava never felt the need to prove herself. Instead, they discovered the joy of collaboration, the power of mutual respect, and the profound satisfaction of knowing that they were stronger together than apart. The quiet desert nights, which had once been filled with Nava's solitary reflection, now echoed with laughter, conversation, and the warmth of companionship. For the first time, she felt truly complete, not because she had lost her independence, but because she had found someone willing to walk beside her through life, respecting her strength and sharing in her journey. Through Elia's arrival, Nava had discovered a new dimension of life. Her strength remained, unchallenged and celebrated, but now it was accompanied by trust, understanding, and partnership. She realized that true companionship was not about changing who she was, but about finding someone who could honor, compliment, and share in her life fully. And in Elias she had found exactly that, a man who matched her spirit, respected her independence, and shared her vision for a life filled with work, laughter, and love. Life for Nava had always been a mix of strength, independence, and adventure. From her childhood, she had learned to rely on herself, to navigate the harsh desert, and to master skills that few could match. Yet now, with Elias by her side, her world had changed in ways she had never imagined. Their partnership had grown through shared work, trust, and understanding, and it was now a full, living connection that touched every part of her life. Nava felt something she had never experienced before, a deep, enduring sense of companionship that did not threaten her independence, but enhanced it. Together, Nava and Elias managed the land and the animals with skill and care. Their days began before the sun rose, when the desert was cool and quiet. Nava would check the water sources, inspect the crops, and prepare the animals for grazing. Elias would move beside her, carrying tools, helping with tasks, and offering suggestions when appropriate. They worked in perfect harmony, understanding each other's rhythms and methods. There was no need for competition or dominance. Their strength was balanced, each complementing the other. The villagers had long admired Nava's independence and strength, but now they also saw the remarkable partnership she had formed. She was no longer the solitary giant they whispered about. Instead, she was part of a duo that radiated respect, harmony, and efficiency. People in the village began to see a new side of her, the warmth and joy that came from having someone who understood her, appreciated her, and walked beside her as an equal. Children watched her with admiration, but now they also saw her laugh, share, and collaborate in ways that made her seem approachable and human, not just larger than life. Elias, too, had changed. He had always been strong, capable, and patient, but life with Nava had deepened his understanding of strength and partnership. He learned that true power was not about dominating others, but about sharing life with respect, patience, and care. Through working alongside Nava, he discovered the joy of collaboration, the satisfaction of complementing another person's skills, and the profound fulfillment of being truly understood. Together, they had created a rhythm in life that balanced work, care, and companionship. Their days were filled with practical work, yet there was also room for joy and creativity. Nava would take Elias to secret spots in the desert, hidden valleys, streams with sparkling water, and hills where the view stretched endlessly. They would watch the sunrise together, feeling the warmth of the first light on their faces, or sit quietly in the evening, listening to the soft whisper of the wind and the distant calls of nocturnal animals. Sometimes they would simply sit together, enjoying each other's presence in silence, knowing that words were not always needed to communicate understanding and connection. Even in moments of challenge, their partnership was strong. There were times when storms swept across the plains, threatening crops and endangering livestock. During these moments, they moved together with precision, helping the animals, securing the land, and ensuring that nothing was lost. There were times when illness touched family members or friends, requiring long hours of care and attention. In each situation, Nava and Elias worked side by side, their trust in each other allowing them to meet every challenge with calm and confidence. These shared struggles deepened their bond, reinforcing the understanding that true partnership thrives not only in ease, but also in adversity. One day, during a particularly harsh heat wave, a fire broke out near the edge of the desert. Flames spread quickly, and the villagers were in panic. Nava and Elias acted immediately, moving with calm precision. Nava guided the villagers to safety, using her knowledge of the terrain and wind patterns to predict the fire's path. Elias helped extinguish smaller fires, assisted those in need, and supported Nava in every way possible. Together, they saved the village from potential disaster. The villagers watched in awe, recognizing not only Nava's skill and courage, but also the strength of the partnership she had built with Elias. It was a display of unity, respect, and mutual reliance that left a lasting impression on everyone present. In quieter moments, they would reflect on their journey together. Nava often remembered the years of solitude, the moments of admiration mixed with misunderstanding, and the longing she had carried for a companion who could meet her spirit. Now, as she sat beside Elias beneath the desert sky, she realized that all those years had prepared her to recognize someone truly compatible. Elias, too, reflected on the path that had led him to her, realizing that meeting someone like Nava had changed his understanding of strength, patience, and connection forever. Their bond extended beyond practical life and daily work. They celebrated the small joys together, the first blooms of the season, a successful hunt, the laughter of children learning from them, and the shared meals prepared with care. Each moment reinforced the understanding that partnership was not about needing someone to complete oneself, but about choosing someone to share the journey with. Nava no longer felt the emptiness that had once accompanied her independence. She had discovered that strength and partnership could coexist, that freedom and connection could enhance each other rather than conflict. Over time, their story became a source of inspiration for the entire region. Travelers passing through the desert would hear of the towering Apache woman and the patient rancher who walked beside her. The villagers shared tales of their partnership, not as a legend of fear or awe, but as a story of mutual respect, trust, and harmony. Children grew up hearing about Nava and Elias, learning that strength was not just about physical ability, but also about kindness, understanding, and the courage to walk alongside another person with equality. Nava's heart, once guarded and cautious, had opened fully. She laughed freely, shared stories with Elias, and allowed herself to dream of the future with him. She discovered the joy of planning together, of building a life that honored both her independence and the connection she had found. Elias, equally, learned to embrace the richness of life shared, understanding that true companionship was a dance of respect, patience, and shared effort. Together, they experienced life more fully than either had ever imagined possible alone. Even in the quietest moments, their partnership was evident. As the sun set behind the hills and the desert sky turned brilliant shades of gold and pink, Nava and Elias would sit together, side by side, reflecting on the day's accomplishments and dreaming of the future. They understood each other without words, supported each other without expectation, and shared life in a way that honored both individuality and connection. In Elias, Nava had found someone capable of meeting her spirit. In Nava, Elias had found someone whose strength inspired and challenged him in the best ways. The land they cared for thrived under their combined efforts. Crops grew strong, animals flourished, and the desert seemed more welcoming, almost as if it recognized the harmony between them. Their work was not just for survival, it was a testament to cooperation, respect, and the power of shared strength. Nava no longer needed to prove herself to the world. She had found someone who did not fear her power, who embraced her independence, and who valued her as an equal in every sense. As the years passed, Nava and Elias continued to live fully, embracing both challenges and joys. They faced harsh weather, unexpected difficulties, and the uncertainties of life with the confidence that they could overcome anything together. They celebrated successes, comforted each other in moments of disappointment, and found joy in the everyday rhythms of life. Their partnership was not built on grand gestures or drama, but on quiet understanding, mutual respect, and the shared knowledge that they were stronger together than apart. Nava's story, once defined by solitude and extraordinary strength, had transformed into a story of balance, companionship, and enduring partnership. She remained the same towering, formidable woman, strong, intelligent, and independent. But now she had found someone who could handle her spirit, respect her independence, and share in her journey. Elias had become more than a companion. He was a partner in every sense, someone who understood the value of equality, patience, and love that did not seek to control or diminish. Their life together became a legend, not just for Nava's height or strength, but for the remarkable partnership they had created. People spoke of them as a model of respect, mutual understanding, and harmony, a reminder that true strength is measured not only in physical ability, but in the capacity to walk together through life, honoring each other's individuality while sharing the journey. Children grew up hearing their story, learning that courage, patience, and respect could create connections stronger than any challenge alone. And so, Nava, the Apache woman who had once lived in solitude, found her equal. With Elias, she discovered that independence and companionship could coexist, that strength and love could enhance rather than diminish one another, and that life was richer when shared with someone who truly understood and respected her. Together they thrived, building a life full of adventure, laughter, work, and quiet joy. The desert, their faithful companion through all the years, now witnessed the extraordinary partnership that had blossomed within it, a testament to patience, understanding, and the enduring power of two strong hearts walking side by side.